Geoff Clark. I'm a Chaperong man. I'm from Chaperong country in the Western Victoria. Australia's Indigenous peoples have a unique system of belief that stretches across this country, which I believe also connects internationally via cultural stories. We've got whale dreaming, we've got star stories, Bunjil creation, and there's also the Seven Sisters stories, which is also a unique story that touches right across this country the individual tribes, clans who have a moral and social, political, and I believe a cultural, which is the main stay of it, a cultural obligation to guide us in our path of honouring the ancestors, the creation stories, and it reminds us of those obligations. And one of the reasons that I believe that this journey that we're on needs to occur is because the politics tend to start to put up barriers to transmission of knowledge. We tend to become a little bit singular. We don't act as a collective anymore, and our description of our land since the native title debate is that we have to now identify roads and fences and trees and municipalities to describe our estate. And I think that in itself is a long-term threat to our cohesion and our moral and our cultural obligations to one another. And I think that's now become a background and also a methodology of anthropologists and archaeology. Like, you know, I do a lot of work on this country and on my country, protecting cultural heritage sites, scar trees, you know, stone axe sites, etc. And you know, they tend to identify it as sort of dead culture when really it's alive. You know, the land has a story. The mountains in the background here have stories attached to them, and you know, we have stories that go into the star. And I've showed you the Dean Mar, the Indigenous protected area that we've declared it under the white system in order to give refuge for birds and animals, lizards, and you know, the fish, the whales, and the very wind, even that sort of, you know, runs over our land, which carries beliefs and cultural stories and his obligations. So I believe that the Seven Sisters story is one that can connect us, but also I think what we're finding now in modern society with Facebooking that and you know, Twitter, etc., is that the knowledge holders who are sitting out there, and unfortunately, and you know, part of our plan of this road trip was to interview an old lady who's now passed by. I can't mention her name, but you know, she was 96 and she held a story. But fortunately, there are, you know, other knowledge holders who sit out there, but they mainly live in poverty. They live in distress, despair, and you know, our system of collective support, emotional, social, mental support, doesn't exist too much because we're dealing with the hardship of interventions and government regulation that regulates. You know, there is no power to make your own decisions. Like, I was one of the people from Australia that went to the United Nations and developed, along with lots of other Indigenous groups from around the world, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And, you know, those principles, the right to self-determination, the right to be able to have your own language, the right to, you know, to practice your belief systems, your culture, you know, that document, that declaration is something that now one of our Aboriginal senators, Lydia Thorpe, is now put into the parliament and trying to get some traction about the practical realities of that. And I think that, you know, we've forgotten the people on the ground. How do we support? How do we support those knowledge holders, the transfer of knowledge? How do we get young people to understand? I think, the welcome to country, the ochre, the possum skin cloaks, the smoking of people. It's certainly something that is enhancing the relationships in this country, but there is a deeper underlying belief system that really needs, I think, some attention, needs some discussion and some assistance about how it is that we honour our elders, honour our stories, the creation stories, and not have it turn in too much into a fantasy world where it's for some to talk about in that context, rather than having it as a living standard. The standards of how you um, treat each other, how you share your grief, your anger, your love. They're the sorts of things that I think can stem from reconnecting with culture, and in particular the Seven Sisters story. I was very fortunate at a younger age, and I'm still looking for the documentary, that the old ladies from Alice Springs invited me to do a corroboree with them some 25, 30 years ago. And I was Nuru, the man that chased the Seven Sisters across the sky. So I was deeply honoured at that time, and still am. And I would like to sort of get back to connecting with those people and others who hold stories. There's also the stories, of the dingo dreaming, the emu tringle, the giant emu. We have Bunjil, we have the bunyip. Like, there are so many stories that we have, and we have to put it in context. And I think we have to put it in a process whereby people can respectfully understand it, participate potentially, and own potentially. But that's these are complex questions and need some complex answers. I think that what we need to have is an understanding that we can't be selfish. We can't judge land, estate, territory as individual property. And I think that the teachings from our cultural belief systems, if we can understand it, I think we'll take away a lot of the angst with the native title settlement. I think we'll take away a lot of the angst between groups who are, fighting over territory, fighting over claiming. It's led to some, enormous rifts in our community, settling the native title, for instance. And I think that, any structure that we build politically, they're talking about a voice to parliament, etc. It has to have that understanding that we are equal at the table. We share a responsibility at the table that goes beyond, the white electoral system, the white political system of domineering, and protecting borders. Look at the problems we have in Russia and Ukraine, etc. Like, they keep chopping and changing their borders, and it's led to, a global crisis and a situation. So, we are one people, we are one mob. And I think, we need to know what the essence of that oneness is, and we need to find that. And I think, the cultural path is a way to achieve that.